Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the 3D Vtuber course. So just like every other course, we're going to be talking about the plugins and programs you'll be needing for this course. And just like how every other course starts, we're going to begin with installing Blender. Now you might be like, why aren't we going to be installing the latest version of Blender? Why install version 3.6? And that is because some of the plugins we will be using are only compatible with version 3.6 of Blender. So go ahead and grab 3.6 over here, open it up, and you should see something like this. Also, bear in mind for this video, I'm going to be jumping between different windows and stuff. Don't worry too much about how I'm doing all that. I'm just trying to show off some of the plugins and what they will be doing for us during this course. So without further ado, let's go over how we install plugins. So plugin number 1 I want you to install is called Bone Manager, and what Bone Manager does, so it's $0, you put 0 in, I want this, it'll give you the zip file, and after you get the zip file, you go to Blender, press Edit, go to Preferences, move down to Add-ons, click Install, go to your Downloads, and locate the Bone Manager add-on, and then click it. If you want this view, make sure you click these squares. After you find the Bone Manager, click it and hit Install. And what the Bone Manager plugin does, it does this. So say for example you have 3 different groups of bones. So say I want this to be my hair bones group, and I want this to be my physics bone group, and I want this to be my default group. Blender by default has a system for this, but it's not super user friendly. Whereas this one, the Bone Layers add-on, I find to be much nicer and lets you organize things much easier. So by default, all the bones in the armature are on layer 1. So we'll just call this default. And I want these 3 bones here to be under the hair layer. And to move bones to different layers for this plugin, you just click this period here. And all those bones now are on the hair layer. It's just a much nicer way of viewing your rig, because once we start adding in a bunch of bones to the avatar, it just makes things much easier to see between all the different stuff. Let's make this physics. Always remember to press the period to add it to the layer. That is the Bone Manager plugin. Plugin 2 for Blender is the Cat's Blender plugin. I'm not the biggest fan of this plugin, not trying to throw shade, but I find that sometimes some of the stuff can break the avatar. For some of the stuff that's on this avatar, I recommend only using this plugin for VRChat Visemes. We'll go over that more once we're trying to make our avatar talk for VRChat later, but that's all I would use that plugin for. So go to Code, download zip, and go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, Install, go to your Downloads folder, look for Cats, click it, Install Add-on. And what that'll look like after you install it, you will see the Cats panel on your side panel here. Press N to open and close it, by the way. And this is literally the only tab we will be using in this plugin. More on that later. Plugin number 3 for Blender is the EdgeFlow add-on. Probably one of my favorite add-ons. It's a really good modeling tool and makes working with edges much nicer in Blender. You can make smooth transitions and clean, nice, clean-looking hard surface models. So go ahead, download the zip again. Go to Blender, Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, Install. Go to your downloads, look for EdgeFlow, click it, install add-on. And what that plugin does is, say for example, you have a mesh that looks something like this. I'm like, I don't like how sharp that is. I kind of want it more balanced out. So I would select these edge loops. I would go to Edge here, and you'll know you have the add-on installed properly is if you see these options down here: set flow, set curve, set linear. We're gonna press set flow. I mean, let me get rid of these two edge loops here, and we're gonna press set flow, and you can see it kind of made the transition between those edges much smoother. It's just an all-around really good modeling tool and great for like smoothing stuff out and making stuff look more polished. And that is the EdgeFlow add-on. Add-on number 4 for Blender is the iFacial MoCap add-on. You want to go to this URL here, scroll down, download the program. This is what the program will look like. You can pin it to your taskbar. This is your local IP, so don't worry, nobody's gonna hack you. And what this does, it allows us to test face tracking inside of Blender without having to jump to Unity and do a full export from Unity. So basically, it allows us to test face tracking much quicker and faster and make more revisions faster without having to go through the whole pipeline just to see the result. And the way you set it up is you would enter the if you have an iPhone and you have the iFacial MoCap app on your phone, you would go to the settings, enter your IP for the phone, the name of the object that I want to have face tracking on is Miso right here. The object name is Miso, so it has to be named Miso, and punctuation is important for this so it can detect it. I'm not going to have the head bone move. My armature's name is Miso Armature, so make sure it has the same name as the armature. Miso Armature. And what you do now is, if I have this all set up properly, you go to your side panel, look for the plugin you installed, iFacial MoCap, and you click Waiting for Connection. And you'll get this Windows Defender pop-up. You just want to hit allow access, and after you hit, if you find it still is not working, you may need to create a new inbound rule in your window firewall for this to work. But it should work after you hit allow, and then you go to the thing, the plugin panel here. So important, hit waiting first in Blender, and then you hit connect in the panel here. So if I hit connect here, my app is already turned on the phone. I have the app on. So app on, waiting, then click connect. And as you can see, our face is now tracking. When using this, where is it? When using this, I recommend going to this viewport, as it can be a little faster when testing tracking, and to use the wireframe so we can see deformations and how it's tracking from there. That is the iFacial MoCap plugin. Next up, we have the simple renaming panel, and what this plugin does, it allows us to rename large groups of objects, whether that be bones, objects, or whatever. So what that does is, say for example, I have a bunch of bones and they're all labeled with the name bone. Let's say I want to name these all hair bone. So I would select these all, go to rename. This is what the add-on is. Go down to bone, search for the word bone, which is what they're called, and I want to rename these to hair Boom. And you can see it changes the name for all of them. It's just a nice handy plugin to have rather than having to go to each and every one and rename it yourself. That's the simple renaming panel. Next up, we have the Texel density checker for Blender. And what this does is it allows us to help us maintain the same resolution across our mesh or our textures in Blender. And what that does, this comes by default in Maya, but Blender doesn't have it. So I'm just going to drag out a window here, click this button, go to UV editor, press tab, go to edit mode, check this button so that stays. Go to material view by clicking this button. And I'm going to show you what this add-on does. Again, ignore all these different things I'm doing right now. I know I'm moving kind of quick, but for the sake of the video, and so it's not going to be 10 years long, we'll just click UV grid. So as you can see, by default it's all the same resolution, but if I had one face that was like super scaled up, for example, I'm like, okay, I want that resolution, the same resolution across all the mesh. What I would do is in my UV editor, I would press N, I'd navigate down to Texel density, I click calculate, 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 and then I select the other UV maps of the other parts of the mesh, and I press set, and it sets it to the same scale as what those other faces were, so that we maintain the same resolution throughout the textures. Next up, we have UcupPaint, another one of my favorite add-ons for Blender. Without it, I probably wouldn't paint inside Blender, as Blender's default painting system is somewhat lackluster. What this add-on does, it basically gives us a Photoshop style workflow for painting inside of Blender. And this is what that looks like. So in texture mode, hit Control Tab, go to Texture Paint, and navigate to UcupPaint node. I'm going to have emission, okay. I'm going to make a new bottom layer, call it whatever you want. Hit X on my brush. I'm just going to paint black here. And it's a similar workflow to like Photoshop, Clip Studio Paint. It's just a layer-based system. I click this tab here, click duplicate blank layer, and maybe I can start painting with blue or whatever. And you have your typical multiply screen, stuff like that for different layers. And you can organize the layers, you can move them above, below, wherever you want them. You can preview layers. Whoops, looks like I drew on the same layer by accident. And you can look at the alphas of the layers. Just a really all around really great tool for painting inside Blender. Makes things 10 times easier. Wouldn't paint inside Blender without it. It'd be impossible. That's the UcupPaint plugin. And finally, this is not a plugin per se. This is just if you want to change the look of your Blender, go ahead and get the zip. And what this does is it allows us to change the theme of our Blender. So go ahead and download that, extract it to your desktop, and you'll see some XML files. And what an XML file is for Blender is that it allows you to change the view or look of your Blender. So you might see on some posts I make on Twitter that my default Blender view is usually like some blue background. So that's what these XML files do for you, is they allow you to change the look of that. And to change that, or to install those XML files, you would go to Themes, Install, and we're gonna find where we installed that. Let's try Choco Mint. It's a bit too bright for my taste, but if it's your vibe, you can go with it. My personal favorite, the one I go with, is Midnight. I just like the cool colors. Mine's a bit different. I add this kind of glow to mine in the background, but yeah, let's go back to the default for now. That's it for the Blender portion of this video and the Blender plugins you will need to install. Okay, moving on to the next portion of this video. This is the Unity segment and what Unity versions Unity plugins we'll be using for Unity. So for starters, you want to navigate to this URL here, and you want to install Unity Hub right here. So download that and you'll get this guy right here. It'll look something like this. You'll want to go from your projects to installs. For this course, we'll be using Unity 2022.3.22 for VRChat. Also, make sure you have Unity version 2021.3.18. This is the version we will be using for Warudo. It's a bit annoying that we can't have one version of Unity. It's just the different versions that these programs use to work, so we had to use the same version when building characters in them. So get those two versions of Unity. We got Unity Hub next. So after you have the two Unity versions installed, go to VRChat, create an account, navigate to download. So go ahead, click download Creator Companion. There is some talk that the Creator Companion can be a bit buggy at times because previously VRChat used to run on version 2019, but now we're on version 2022. So some things might not always work the best, I guess to say. So take it with a grain of salt, this program. I mean, it's still the quote-unquote best version to use for making VRChats from what I know. So I would get the Creator Companion app. This is what it'll look like. We'll go over more about this program later once we get to the VRChat portion of the course. So download this guy. Next, the shader we'll be using for our avatar is the Poiyomi Toon shader. Go ahead and navigate to this link here. Download this zip here for the Toon shader. I use the pro version of this shader. You can download that off of Poiyomi's Patreon, I believe. You would have to sub for $5 a month or something like that to get the pro version. The pro version just has a couple features on it that I like to use. One of them being screen-based ambient occlusion, but we'll talk more on that later. Last optional plugin for Unity is Magica Cloth 2. I highly recommend this. Some of the best physics and 3D VTubing right now. The only downside is that Magica Cloth 2 is only compatible with Warudo. VRChat uses their own Fizzbone system, so bear in mind if you do buy this, it's not so expensive to where you'll break the bank, but it's probably some of the best physics 3D VTubing right now that we use for Warudo. So go ahead and grab that if you want. Other than that, that wraps up this video. Three most important things is make sure you have these versions of Unity and you have Blender 3.6 installed. all that being said, I'll see you guys in episode 3, where we'll start getting into the meat of the course. We'll start modeling a donut, and I'll start going over my Blender quick favorite hotkeys, as well as some general Blender navigation. So see you guys then.